Welcome to Art Talk Tuesday. First, I want to start by apologizing for not having a video last week. I record the videos on my phone. My phone was stolen, and I didn't get one back in time to do an Art Talk Tuesday on Tuesday. So I opted to just wait until this week because then I couldn't call it Art Talk Tuesday if it wasn't on Tuesday. Have a new phone now, everything's working well, so we're back on track. I believe we're in episode 21. So for those of you who've been tuning in and actually watching these, I want to say thank you for your support thus far. And we're entering a new stage. As you see, I've changed up the format a little bit. I want to try this more vertical format for a little while, see how that works. A couple of people already said they think it's all right. I know it leaves a little black space around the side of the video, but hopefully it allows you to zoom in a little bit more on the art. We can go back to the other one in a couple of weeks if you like. This week we're starting a discussion of a new series. We're going to be looking at black and white works, all of them in Scratchboard. For those of you who don't remember, I've done a couple of Scratchboard pieces previously, but Scratchboard is a white clay board that I black over with ink, India inks, and then once it dries, I begin to scratch the image back out using various scratching tools, mostly different types of X-Acto blades. I use some surgical scalpels, a few other things. Sometimes some steel wool to get different textures, different things like that. So that's basically what this image is you see today is a Scratchboard image. It is the first image in a series entitled When We Pray, which is also the name of my book. Then all the images that we're going to talk about in the next 8 weeks, because there are eight images, are images from my book, When We Pray. So each of these images that you see here is the opener for a chapter in the book. And the book was actually inspired in the opposite way because, and I've talked about this before, so I won't spend too much time on it. The images came first, and then the prose was developed after the images. So kind of a different approach to the creative aspect of writing. All these images were downloaded to me during the course of my meditation practice. I did not know they were going to be a series until I got to about the fourth one, which I've said happens before. It happened with the chakra series, happens with a lot of my series. I don't know what's going on. I just kind of let spirit guide me intuitively in what I'm given. I try to reproduce as well as I can because nothing always fits the vision in your mind. Any artist will tell you that no matter how good other people think, they can always find something they could have done better, or it didn't quite look as like we thought it would look in our mind, even after sketching it out in detail. But you know, that's just the nature of the creative business, so to speak, and nature of the art, because it is an art in itself. It is an art to be able to create and depict art, the vision in one's mind. So anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. So this piece is entitled When We Pray. It is the first piece that I created in this series. And what was happening was I was in the midst of a deep meditation practice, and I began to feel this sense of presence just all around me. And I knew it was spiritual presence, divine presence. So I wasn't afraid. I was just allowing myself to open up more to that presence. And I felt like I was being enveloped by a presence, an intelligent presence. And then I began to feel this overwhelming sense of love and of comfort and care and safety. And so I began to feel like these were hands, the hands of divine, the hands of spirit, encircling me, protecting me, keeping me, nourishing me. And so that experience led me to this whole idea of this When We Pray series, and it led me to this first image. And the hands, all of the hands in the whole series are the hands of the divine, the hands of spirit. And so that's what the hands symbolize in each of these in this piece. So just to give the basics, framed and matted, these pieces are 15 by 25. So 15 horizontal by 25 vertical. The originals are all framed and matted behind glass, so they're all ready to go. Approximate price of these images also, just like the chakra series, they're $1,500 a piece. Prints begin at $29 for, I think, like a 6x4, something like that, and go on up depending on what else you want. Just a basic piece of paper at that size, and then you can get frames, you can get mats. You can do it all on the website. It makes it very easy for you to place your order. Having said that, when we pray, so all the hands in the image are the hands of the divine. You'll see as we go throughout the series that all of the hands are in different positions around the figure. And so this particular image, as you can see, the hands are doing this. So they're actually supporting and nurturing the figure. This is a very open and receptive way of being when your hands are open, palms up, always a symbol of receptivity, and also symbol of grounding. Spirit here is the bedrock for this image. You see this, the image here is on his knees, so he's on his knees in prayer, arms lifted up, and what we could be considered exhortation or supplication, whichever you would like to interpret. I leave that open to you. And then grounded in and partially surrounded in these divine hands, the hands of the divine, the presence of spirit being the bedrock and foundation for everything that comes forth into the physical realm. So we see here I've got a very extravagant cross behind, so this one is more geared toward the Christian tradition, but as you see some of the other images as we go forth, they're grounded in some other traditions, but always, once again, wanting to emphasize the connections between all faith, between all divinity, because when we talk about religion, we talk about a series of rituals and practices, dogma, which would basically be an orthodoxy, those types of things. We talk about systems of beliefs, systems of philosophy, ways of being that have all been put together to form some kind of, usually, hopefully, mostly cohesive whole, but not always. And we look at some of the more, well, even actually, we look at some of the more indigenous, what we consider more indigenous religions. Actually, there is a system, there is philosophy. Many of the Western religious people and philosophers didn't think there was. It was all random type of devil worship type stuff, but that's not true. As you actually be going to talk with people, begin to understand what they're trying to do and what they believe, you see that there is coherency, there is a connection, there is a dynamism, there is a system. So that's just what when we talk about religion, that's what we're talking about. When we talk about spirituality, we're talking about a much more broader spectrum that may or may not be embossed in any type of religion, quote unquote, at all. So you can have spirituality without religion, but you can't have religion without spirituality. In the same way, you cannot have religion without art. You can have art without religion. As we can see in the modern world, the modern art apparatus has managed to, in many cases, most cases, to separate spirituality, religion, the religious dimensions or aspects of a work's creation or its meaning from the actual work of art itself, art for art's sake, quote unquote, which started with Marcel Duchamp. However, you cannot have a religious experience without some form of artistic expression, whether it's writing, whether it's singing, whether it's dancing, whether it's music, whether it's a visual image, or mostly usually it's a combination of all of the above. Even in the Protestant tradition, which has the quote unquote, and Jewish traditions would have the quote unquote anathema against images. They're still there, Muslim tradition as well. So when we talk about this, we want to look at that. So the main thing that they all have in common, no matter what the religious tradition, indigenous, whatever, is prayer. Every system, every spirituality even, has some form of prayer. Some emphasize that more in the form of meditation. Others emphasize that in a more active form in terms of verbal prayer or whatever, but they all have that in common. So prayer is the linchpin to the spiritual life, period, no matter what. And when I say prayer, I use that in a very broad sense to mean any type of opening or yearning of the self toward the divine can be considered in its broadest sense a form of prayer. Okay, so I'm looking at this in a very broad way. That way there's not much to argue about. Okay, we're all ultimately talking about the same, using the same tool. Now, what we believe that tool leads us to may be different. The conclusion we draw and based upon those experiences may be different, but the tool is always the same, and that is prayer. And you could, if you want to distinguish prayer from meditation, you could. I don't think there's really that big of an emphasis. It's more in the, I won't say the approach, more in the activity versus what you're actually doing, because all of these are methods or ways of connecting to that which is higher, connecting to that which is beyond us, and that which is deeper inside of us in many cases, which we always want to forget that we're still going inward. And so looking at this piece, once again, this piece is in Scratchboard. Each of these little lines, you can't see them here, but when I do the breakdown, you see each of these is a scratch. So these Scratchboard pieces are very labor intensive. They take a long time. A lot of times sitting with a magnifying glass or magnifying eyeglasses and really just each little line, you just got to do it. Unlike with a pencil, you can kind of do broad swabs, or with a brush, you can do broad swabs to make color, make tone. You can't do that with scratchboard. You have to just sit there and scratch each little line. Sometimes I'm overlapping them, sometimes I'm stippling them, but you have to do it. So these broad areas that have less color, I had to scratch all that out. And I do have a few tools that make it a little bit more excessive and a little bit more quick, but actually you have to do it. And so we have the hands of the divine here, the figure being kind of surrounded and nurtured and held, supported in these divine hands. Figure's on his knees, his face tilted up, lifting towards heaven, toward the spirit. You can see here that this symbol here in the heart is actually the Tibetan symbol for enlightenment. So although I have the symbol of the cross here behind the figure, I have the Tibetan symbol for enlightenment here emanating from the heart, where the heart chakra would be. And all this here, these little things around here, the white here, these are symbolic of the aura and of spiritual power, spiritual energies flowing around the figure. I also have the Tibetan symbol for enlightenment here up above the figure, which would be at the higher self point. So it's not here where the crown chakra would be, but higher at the higher self point. So this higher self connecting to this spiritual self within the body. If you look here very closely, you see at the point where the third eye would be, I have a star here, so a symbol of enlightenment, the inner light coming in, seeing with his spiritual eyes. When we talk about the whole idea of the spiritual senses, you hear that in Ignatian spirituality through the Catholic tradition. Also the Christian exhorter Jonathan Edwards talked a lot about the spiritual senses. And so we have inner senses that are tuned more deeply to the spiritual, to the higher dimensions. And so this whole idea of the spiritual sense, the third eye, spiritual eye, opening up. And so receiving enlightenment, opening, receiving, seeing the spiritual qualities. Here on the figure, I've got just a little wristband here just to kind of add something to make it more accessible. T-shirt, okay? So really wanted to make it a little bit more contemporary, even though I'm keeping some of these details held back because I want to emphasize the other details in the figure is not as important as the hands, arms here reaching up towards God, obviously the face and the hands of the divine. So it's keeping some of this, just kind of keeping it black and plain in order to emphasize these other areas. And we do that a lot as artists. We pull some images out, portions of the image out to emphasize them and push some images back, or we leave some things less detailed so they kind of become less prominent in the image, which forces you to look at other things that are more highly rendered or brighter, etc. So I'm playing with that notion here. Also, I put the aura here around, which also helps to distinguish the figure from the background because I didn't want it to blend out that much, but I did want to emphasize this. So I've got the hands of divine here, Christian cross for the whole idea, we could say, of sacrifice, of opening. Here, figure in an opening pose, right? Chest exposed, palms out. All these are symbols of yielding, of opening, receptivity. Chin raised up, also a symbol of receptivity. You notice boxers, when they box, I tell you, put your chin down, keep your chin down, right? Keep your neck from being exposed and keep your chin from being vulnerable. So that whole idea here, and then figures experiencing enlightenment energies, right? And that's what we have. So this whole idea of prayer as an opening and a receptive state. So that's what we're talking about with this piece. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Damon Powell Artist. You put in Damon Powell Artist, it'll come up. Glad to see you again this week. Look forward to talking to you about the rest of the pieces. Be well.